Here's what we do here. We read philosophy, we review philosophy, and as I was just saying, this may not be for you. If you stick around to the end and you don't like it, you get to review it and you get to pan it. We have an emote review. You can spam emotes to tell me how you feel about the paper. This is my first time reading it. I don't think I've read any Deleuze, really. I may have read some very short pieces in the past, but this is a Postscript on the Societies of Control from 1990. So he is a relatively contemporary person, or this is a relatively contemporary piece. Yeah. He was a contemporary of Derrida, Foucault, etc. He died in the 90s. Okay, so yeah. So this is only a few pages long, and here we go. And as always, my first time reading it, I will try to explain it as best I can, and let me know if you have questions. You're going to go to sleep. Have a good night, Yovko. Thanks for being here. Yeah, please, yeah. And as always, like, I like you being here, but, like, take care of yourselves, chat. Yeah. So here we go. Historical. Foucault located the disciplinary societies in the 18th and 19th centuries. They reached their height at the outset of the 20th. They initiate the organization of vast spaces of enclosure. All right, yeah, see, this is like, you need some history here that I don't know. Like, whatever this shit is, I have no idea. Like, I can make stuff up, but I'm just guessing at this point what he's talking about. The individual never ceases passing from one closed environment to another, each having its own laws. First the family, then the school, you are no longer in your family, then the barracks, you are no longer at school, then the factory, from time to time the hospital, possibly the prison, the preeminent instance of the enclosed environment. It's the prison that serves the analogical model. At the sight of some laborers, the heroine of Rossellini's Europa 51 could exclaim, "I thought I was seeing convicts." Okay, so the idea now is basically, I think this is actually maybe the Heideggerian sort of like, our society has governed all parts of our lives at this point. And so we've technologized our entire society. Everything has, a function, everything's fitting in together. You don't actually have any sort of just like go off and do stuff. You're going from one part of your life to the next, to the next, to the next, and each part has its own kind of like little narrative and rules to go with it. And so there's no like open freedom here. You're just doing what you're kind of told to do at different times. All right, so Kapar says, yeah, that's basically it. And a specific type of disciplinary society came around with industrial capitalism and nation states. Yeah, so this is the sort of the capitalism taking over all parts of the society. And, this is nowadays, everyone feels this. Late stage capitalism, you can't get out of it. Like everywhere you go, you're still like governed by like these stupid money and like credit scores. Nothing's good because everything is always like overly efficientized and you've got to deal with all the systems all the time. It's not fun. Hey, what's up, Nick? Whatever great insights Foucault had, it's hard for me to appreciate any of them without thinking about him paying to have sex with children in Morocco. Yeah, we were just talking about Heidegger earlier too, and like, scumbags. So, okay. Oh, Misadventures in Astro. Thank you for the lurk. Again, don't ask about Marx about Lassalle. Yeah, again, no one is good in the history of philosophy, in my opinion. And maybe there's one or two that were kind of recent, but yeah. Okay. Foucault has brilliantly analyzed the ideal project of these environments of enclosure, particularly visible within the factory, to concentrate, to distribute in space, to order in time, to compose a productive force within the dimension of space-time whose effect will be greater than the sum of its component forces. But what Foucault recognized as well was the transience of this model. It succeeded that the societies of sovereignty, the goal and function of which were something quite different, to tax rather than to organize production, to rule on death rather than to administer life. The transition took place over time, and Napoleon seemed to affect the large-scale conversion from one society to the other. But in their turn, the disciplines underwent a crisis to the benefit of a new force that were gradually instituted and which accelerated after World War II. A disciplinary society was what we already no longer were, what we had ceased to be. Okay, so he's saying after Napoleon ushered in this sort of like totalization of the control of all parts of our life, where we're always administered in some way. So this is like social controls always exist. Sure, we're somehow beyond that or something new right here. The disciplinary society was not what we were. We're already past that. Okay, we are in a generalized crisis in relation to all the environments of enclosure: prison, hospital, factory, school, family. The family is an interior in crisis like all other interiors, scholarly, professional, etc. The administrations in charge never cease announcing supposedly necessary reforms to reform schools, to reform industries, hospitals, the armed forces, prisons. But everyone knows that these institutions are finished, whatever the length of their expiration periods. It's only a matter of administering their last rites and keeping people employed until the installation of the new forces knocking at the door. And this is fair. You're always trying to, revamp, evolve, whatever it is. Whatever it was, they're always trying to, update the rules to make new rules, and then you have to update those rules. So this is fair. In our current society, we're always yeah, well, it was okay, now we fix some things, but now we have new things we got to do, and eventually it just keeps circling back on itself. Okay, so these are so it was no longer the discipline of the past, which was the government just keeping us in line so we could collect tax. These are societies of control, is what he's calling this thing we're in now. So these are societies of control, which are in the process of replacing the disciplinary societies. Control is the name Burroughs proposed as a term for the new monster, one that Foucault recognizes as our immediate future. Paul Virilio also is continually analyzing the ultra-rapid form of free-floating control that replaced the old disciplines operating in the time frame of a closed system. There is no need here to invoke the extraordinary pharmaceutical productions, the molecular engineering, the genetic manipulations, although these are slated to enter into the new process. There is no need to ask which is the toughest or most tolerable regime, for it's within each of them that liberating and enslaving forces confront one another. For example, in the crisis of the hospital as environment of enclosure, neighborhood clinics, hospices, and daycare could at first express new freedom, but they could participate as well in mechanisms of control that are equal to the harshest confinements. There is no need to fear or hope, but only to look for new weapons. K-Par says, disciplinary societies policed humans in space. Control societies police desire through codes. What's up, Rockophile? How you doing? Society adapts then. Yep. K-Par says, and databases and registries and records. Yeah. So that's basically where we're going with this one, is that, everything is getting quantized. There's always a number associated to everything. And so we've got, as you say, databases and records. And this is even worse nowadays with the AI, because every act we make online is now building a data model of us as a product that, advertisers market to, politicians are marketing to. And so it's trying to control all the aspects. And it's just a new regime here. And this is a nice example. Say, look, you might think that getting out of the hospital into a local clinic might be better, but they could also just be doing the same shit as the hospital, just through other means. So it's you think okay, maybe we're doing something special here over on Twitch, but really this is just Amazon gathering data about us that they're going to use to do their AI models for whatever. Speaking of, come on Amazon, why are your ads always so shitty? But yeah. K-Par says, one that doesn't have to restrict with force, but channel decisions. Yeah, it takes the brakes off. Yeah. So that they're calling this online, I saw few years ago, they call it nudging. So they show you things that will just get you a little bit more every time you see it, a little bit more into what they want you to do, what they want you to see, what they want you to buy, that sort of thing. So the more they know about you, the more they can just sort of tap you in the right direction or nudge you in the right direction, that they, to make money off you, to use your life to their ends. Okay. Logic. The different internments or spaces of enclosure through which, so this spaces of enclosure is what we're talking about here. These are the methods of basically capturing information about you. So spaces of enclosure, this would be the web browser that we're all, or the cell phone that we're all mediating through here. If you're on a desktop, you're talking about a web browser or Windows or whatever your desktop is. And if you're on the phone, then you're on Android, iOS, whatever that is. And these are the things that, can monitor and change your behavior. In Foucault, they are schools, army, family. Yeah, I mean, I'm getting that. I'm trying to update it so I can understand it in today terms. But yeah, he was saying that up here somewhere, the schools, army, family, when he mentioned Foucault. Okay. Yeah, that's where Deleuze is taking it. Yep. Cool. Thank you, Latvian. The different internments or spaces of enclosure through which the individual passes are independent variables. Each time one is supposed to start from zero, and although a common language for all these places exists, it is analogical. On the other hand, the different control mechanisms are inseparable variations, forming a system of variable geometry, the language of which is numerical, which doesn't necessarily mean binary. Yeah, so this is just saying, this turning everything into data that can be used. I mean, this is just 1990 speak for, the quantization of our behavior. Enclosures are molds, distinct castings, but controls are modulations, like a self-deforming cast that will continuously change from one moment to the other, or like a sieve whose mesh will transmute from point to point. Yeah, exactly. And everyone here knows, your phone was acting one way 1 week, it updates, it's now forcing you to do something slightly different, and that's what's happening here. You're accessing the world through your phone, but they're changing how you're doing it, so they're molding your behavior according to whatever their corporate strategy is. And that's what this, I think, is going on right here. Not that. Just enclosures or molds. So, I mean, the way we are, the user interface that we, connect with the world is being modulated here. Okay, this is obvious in the matter of salaries. The factory was a body that contains its internal forces at a level of equilibrium, the highest possible in terms of production, the lowest possible in terms of wages. But in a society of control, the corporation has replaced the factory, and the corporation is a spirit, a gas. Of course, the factory was already familiar with the system of bonuses, but the corporation works more deeply to impose a modulation of each salary in states of perpetual metastability that operate through challenges, contests, and highly comic group sessions. Yeah, so I mean, if you've dealt with corporate bullshit, that's what they're doing. They're not just trying to make a product. There's a corporate bullshit going on, and it's a pain they have to deal with, but that's how it modifies your behavior to be in the company culture. So K-Par says, used to be enclosures and molds, now it's controls and modulation. Yep. I mean, this is just sort of like the evolution of the old way that they got you to work. If the most idiotic television game shows are so successful, it's because they express the corporate situation with great precision. The factory constituted individuals as a single body to the double advantage of the boss, who surveyed each element within the mass, and the unions who mobilized a mass resistance. But the corporation constantly presents the brashest rivalry as a healthy form of emulation, an excellent motivational force that opposes individuals against one another and runs through each, dividing each within. Yeah, so you have like different teams within a corporation competing against each other to do stupid shit to make more money. But they don't care how it works. They just care about, divide and conquer, survival of the fittest within the bullshit corporate structure. Okay. The modulating principle of salary according to merit has not failed to tempt national education itself. Indeed, just as the corporation replaces the factory, perpetual training tends to replace the school, and continuous control to replace the examination, which is the surest way of delivering the school over to the corporation. Yeah, so it's you never get to be out of their ability to modify your behavior. You're always trying to live up to some impossible standard. In the disciplinary societies, one was always starting again from schools to the barracks, from the barracks to the factory, while in the society of control, one is never finished with anything. The corporation, the educational system, the armed services being a metastable states coexisting in the one and the same modulation, like a universal system of deformation. In the trial, Kafka, who had already placed himself at the pivotal point between the two types of social formation, described the most fearsome of juridical forms. The apparent acquittal of the disciplinary societies between two incarcerations and the limitless postponements of the societies of control and continuous variation are two very different modes of juridical life, and if our law is hesitant itself in crisis, it's because we are leaving one in order to enter the other. Yeah, so we've got these, always got to be this is, you have to always be on your grind in the modern parlance. Why are you not grinding? What's your hustle? Where's your hustle at? This is everything has to be under this constantly improving control sort of thing. Total aside, says Vipers, but I'm sure many of you heard that the UK Home Secretary Yvette Cooper prescribed Palestinian Action as a terrorist organization. Palestine Action. Well, I just read that a new direct action group has formed to take over Palestine Action's effort, and they're calling themselves Yvette Cooper. I do like the humor that the Brits have sometimes. Yeah. Capehart says it's also more literal than that. You aren't an individual anymore, but dividual? What's that? I don't even know. You're a bank account number to your bank, a passport to the border agent, a student number to your school. That's fair. You're just data to them. Like how to a tick, like how a to a tick, there's only sweat and blood. It doesn't need to know what a mammal is or that it's on a cow. Yeah. And that's part of the issue here, is that we are just data models to everything now. Nose is itching. So we've turned ourselves into data models, which allows us to be infinitely like sort of manipulable, because they have the data, they can manipulate it and say, okay, we're going to push you this way, then we're going to push you that way. And either way, they're winning. It's like heads they win, tails you lose. Okay. The disciplinary societies have two poles. The signature that designates the individual, and the numbers are administrative numeration that indicates his or her position within a mass. Yeah, and this is the data model of the AIs that we have now. This is because the disciplines never saw any incompatibility between these two, and because at the same time, power individualizes and masses together, that is, constitutes those over whom it exercises power into a body and molds the individual of each member of that body. Foucault saw the origin of this double charge in the pastoral power of the priest, the flock, and each of its animals, but civil power moves in turn and by other means to make itself lay priest. Yeah, so again, they make us all data models, but then they can like correlate our individual models we have and say, okay, these are all the people we can modify, and they group us together, and then they, sell that to people who want to have people with the certain properties that they can sell garbage to, or political power, or whatever it is. In the societies of control, on the other hand, what is important is no longer either a signature or a number, but a code. The code is a password, while on the other hand, the disciplinary societies are regulated by watchwords, as much from the point of view of integration as from that of resistance. The numerical language of control is made of codes that mark access to information or reject it. We no longer find ourselves dealing with mass individual pair. Individuals have become individuals, that's what you were saying. And masses, samples, data markets, or banks. Yeah, so in this, the banks is more of like a, information bank, like a storage bank of data. Perhaps it is money that expresses the distinction between the two societies best, since discipline always referred back to minted money that locks gold in as numerical standard, while control relates to floating rates of exchange modulated according to a rate established by a set of standard currencies. The old monetary mole is the animal of the spaces of enclosure, but the serpent is that of the societies of control. We've passed from one animal to the other, from the mole to the serpent, in the system under which we live, but also in our manner of living and in our relation with others. The disciplinary man was a discontinuous producer of energy, but the man of control is undulatory, in orbit in a continuous network. Everywhere surfing has already replaced the older sports. Yeah, so a lot of this is just sort of flowery language here, but the point, I guess, in this section is saying, look, there's no thing you are anymore except this sort of like changeable data model that is getting used in different ways. And surfing, of course, is you're in a constant state of falling, is what it is. You're sliding down the water, but the water is moving up underneath you, so that kind of keeps you at the same spot. And so you're always in this falling position, is kind of what it is. Okay. Types of machines are easily matched with each type of society, not that machines are determining, but because they express those social forms capable of generating them and using them. The old societies of sovereignty made use of simple machines, levers, pulleys, clocks, but the recent disciplinary societies equipped themselves with machines involving energy, with the passive danger of entropy and the active danger of sabotage. The societies of control operate with machines of a third type, computers whose passive danger is jamming and whose active one is piracy and the introduction of viruses. This technological evolution must be, even more profoundly, a mutation of capitalism, an already well-known or familiar mutation that can be summed up as follows. 19th century capitalism is a capitalism of concentration for production and for property. It therefore erects the factory as a space of enclosure, the capitalist being the owner of the means of production, but also progressively the owner of other spaces conceived through analogy, like the worker's familial house, the school. As for markets, they are conquered sometimes by specialization, sometimes by colonization, sometimes by lowering the cost of production. But in the present situation, capitalism is no longer involved in production, which it often regulates to the third world, even for the complex forms of textiles, metallurgy, or oil production. It's a capitalism of higher order production. It no longer buys raw materials and no longer sells the finished products. It buys the finished products or assembles parts. What it wants to sell is services, and what it wants to buy is stocks. Nagel, what is to be a tick? Precisely. All this talk about production is calming my cat down. Well, I'm happy for your cat. And for you, I guess, at that point. But yeah, I mean, this is 90s talk. And this is 1990. So this talk of like what the computers are up to, this is really in its nascent stage. This really hasn't gotten, like, Deleuze seems like he's on top of like the tech of the day, but this really hasn't taken over yet. Like the internet, he may have understood the internet, but like this is 1990. This is before the World Wide Web. This is, maybe they're starting to like have like some news about like DARPANet or whatever it was, that the universities were starting to coordinate between them. So the idea that like what's going on, he's talking about the stock market. And now if you guys remember, what was it? Trading Places with Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy. That was kind of the idea. That is controlling all the stuff. It's these assholes, these stockbrokers who are, you know, just playing games of numbers and controlling all of society. And that's what we got here. This is services and buy stocks. Like, this is Trading Places right here. They had billboards back then. Yeah, that's fair. But like the computers were starting to enable this massive shift into this sort of like meta level, as Deleuze is saying here. But yeah, AOL was 1985, my bro. 1985 AOL? Really? Am I wrong about that? I thought that was like 1990s. Like, when was the World Wide Web? I thought that was like 1993. AOL in 1985. That seems a little too early, Dojo. Always prove me wrong. Show me a link. Chaos says, I know a guy who was involved in DARPANet. He retired young and drove a car full of stuffed animals as a middle-aged man doing whimsical things. Ain't that the dream? Ain't that the dream? Like, that's if that's that guy's best life, I wish him all the best. Yeah. Okay. This is no longer a capitalism for production, but for the product, which is to say for being sold or marketed, and we're the product now. Thus, it is essentially dispersive, and the factory has given way to the corporation. The family, the school, the army, the factory are no longer the distinct analogical spaces that converge towards an owner, state, or power, but coded figures, deformable and transformable, of a single corporation that now has only stockbrokers. Cass says the service traces its back to an online service known as Play.net. Play.net licensed software from Quantum Link, which was online in November of 1985. Yeah, so AOL was not in 1985. There was some other company called Quantum Link and PlayNet in 1985. So, I mean, go, like, if you're going to say AOL, that's not 1985. But, like, fair enough that it has older software. The first internet account at Michigan State outside of computer science-related debts came in 1992. The Web Mosaic, etc. came around in 1995. See? I was right about my history. I was alive back then. I remember. Yeah. World Wide Web was 1993. I think I even said that. Thank you. I appreciate you looking it up, though. 95, AOL had about 3 million active users. Yep. What up, nerds? Hey, Mark, how you doing? Hope you're having a good day. We're reading Gilles Deleuze, Postscript on the Societies of Control, and we're just reminiscing about all the shit we're in now with the internet and how the world is going. Yeah, you're alive. Hey, that's good. As my neighbor used to say, still vertical. He's not vertical anymore, but he was back then. 1993, what a year to be alive. Yeah, I was alive. I'm old. So yeah. So now we don't have these like, owners anymore. We just have stockholders and like corporate like structures. There is no stockholder anymore to like, no, there's no owner anymore to go like, take down. There's just the corporate structure. You're alive, but only just, yeah. Unreal says, my one advisor was a big fan of Gopher, which was a kind of web. I remember Gopher. Yes. Chaos says, I remember reading a book about jobs in about 2001, and not a single person in your school cared. Yeah. It's like, this was a long time. Yeah, Tindaros was not even a glimmer in his parents' eye. Revan, what's up? It just gets more recursive from here. Data about data, data about data, data, data. Well, that's the point. Yeah, and you got like data with like double prime, triple prime. So this is the whole point of this article, it looks like, is to argue that we're no longer in like the old sort of capitalism. We're just sort of turning into data broker societies. And in 1990, this is fucking clever. Like, this is smart in 1990. Nowadays, you can go like read a Wired article about this, like Popular News. This is nothing too crazy, but like the idea is like you're saying what wants is to sell services and wants to buy is stocks. Now, he doesn't literally mean stocks. I think. I mean they've been around for hundreds of years. Stocks. The whole point is that it's a data-driven product. You're getting something that only is associated with like a data model of like what the company produces. You're not actually getting what the company produces. I don't exist. You're just hallucinating me. That is correct. Luminous says whether I'm alive depends on which month we're talking. True. AOL was 1985. Interestingly, they were selling modems. Fake it till you make it. Yeah. Unreal says the same advisor. He was just an honors college advisor and had his PhD in philosophy of education, not a tech field. Was like the only person on campus who had a Next rather than a normal PC or Mac. Oh, cool. Old stuff. The Baltics are a hallucination. Russia. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Even art has left the spaces of enclosure in order to enter into the open circuits of the bank. Yeah. So well, if you know anything about the art market, yes. I mean, it's a crazy fucking thing. The conquests of the market are made by grabbing control and no longer by disciplinary training, by fixing the exchange rate much more than by lowering costs, by transformation of the product more than by specialization of production. Yeah. Like, so if you understand the art market, why people buy things and the valuation is all these like weird ideas about what it could be sold for. And then that's used as a product nowadays for rich people to like, move money around. So like that's really like it was like this back then too. So like the art market is like, weirdly propped up by like rich people moving money around and like hiding money and keeping it there. AOL had online gaming in 86, which is sort of amazing. That's cool. Kaz says Russian psyops probably could make many people think. I salute you. Thank you for the follow. Stay back. There maybe people their own existence is a hallucination much more effectively than any philosopher. I mean, you don't need to be Russian psyops. A lot of people can do that now. We've been doing that for a long time. Frankly, the current rash of ChatGPT is making people a little like AI crazy. There's plenty of people that think we're living in a simulation. The simulation theorists, that's nothing new. So like, you don't need to be psyops. This is just kind of common shit nowadays. Okay. So corruption thereby gains a new power. Yeah, so now we're talking about like corrupt art dealers. Yay! Marketing has become the center or the soul of the corporation. Yeah, we're just marketing ideas. Welcome to the government. We are taught that corporations have a soul, which is the most terrifying news in the world. The operation of markets is now the instrument of social control and forms the impudent breed of our masters. Yeah. And if you want to know who's in control, it's like, we've got our tech giants here in the United States and across the world. And so they're controlling, the money and the ideas. Okay. Control is short-term control is short-term and of rapid rates of turnover, but also continuous and without limit, while discipline was of long duration, infinite and discontinuous. Man is no longer man enclosed, but man in debt. It is true that capitalism has retained as a constant the extreme poverty of 3/4 of humanity, too poor for debt, too numerous for confinement. Control will not only have to deal with erosions of frontiers, but with the explosions within shanty towns or ghettos. Yeah, but again, that does, like, even then, even the poor nowadays have cell phones. Even they are being monitored and sort of manipulated through, like, data stuff. So this is 1990. No one saw the internet, like, or the cell phone revolution coming at this point. So, like, the idea that, like, we don't have access to the poor, we do now. These corporations definitely do. Okay. Oligarchy, hooray, exactly. You love this? You love simulation theory? Oh, there you go, Mark. Revan says, this hand lotion will solve your depression because you rub it in your hands instead of something like, this lotion heals your sin. You're buying beliefs and feelings whose aesthetic is modified instead of the actual thing you're getting. I mean, that's like you're getting these ideas. But I mean, to be fair, there's been marketing forever. We're been selling people ideas forever. I think the difference here isn't so much that the products are new, it's the way we have become products for the corporations. We are no longer making the product. We are just sort of like these cogs in the grand information machine. And that's more, I think, at it here. Guess as I was talking to my partner, it seems like a lot of young people are reliving the premise of Her, which probably was the original intent of the film, as a sad dystopia. Yep. Even the poor have credit cards. Yeah, exactly, Dojo. I mean, there's certain good things about that they get access to money and can, like, do stuff. But then it's this sort of totalizing control that the data brokers have over everyone then. Even without one, do you see the Walmart Autocop security things? I don't know what that is. Kaya says, I use lotion throughout the day, exist when I climb, then I use chalk, which is anti-lotion. Yep. You switched her off, huh? Yeah. Who would do the cooking? Yes. Deleuze does write a bit about Bernays. Okay. You guys. Platform capitalism. Yep. Okay. Yep. And Vipers doesn't kink shame. Program. The conception of a control mechanism giving the position of any element within an open environment at any given instant, whether animal in a reserve or human in a corporation, as with an electronic collar. Yes, the electronic collar. This is cell phone nowadays. Is not necessarily one of science fiction. Felix Guattari has imagined a city where one would be able to leave one's apartment, one's street, one's neighborhood, thanks to one's individual electronic card that raises a given barrier, but the card could just as easily be rejected on a given day or between certain hours. What counts is not the barrier, but the computer that tracks each person's position, licit or illicit, and affects a universal modulation. Yeah, and so this is the, credit scores, social control things, and what you're allowed to do. I mean, we're there. The socio-technological study of the mechanisms of control grasped at their inception would have to be categorical and to describe what is already in the process of substitution for the disciplinary sites of enclosure whose crisis is everywhere proclaimed. Let's see. Cass says, I saw a very good and funny satirical play about one of the richest men in Canada, Mr. Weston, Loblaw, good stuff. Unreal says, quote, platform capitalism refers to the activities of companies such as Google, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Uber, Airbnb, Amazon, and others operate as platforms. In this business model, both hardware and software are used as a foundation platform for other actors to conduct their own business. Platform capitalism has both been heralded as beneficial and denounced as detrimental by various authors. Yeah, and left accelerations influenced by Deleuze talk about platform capitalism. Fair. I mean, when Airbnb came out, it was like crazy and great because, like, people could make money off, like, having an extra room, and then it destroyed the housing market, and, like, the tourists are overtaking stuff because there's nowhere for like actual people to live. So it's like, what are you actually doing when you take over the old structures of where people lived and like included it into the market? It's like you're taking away what actually was useful to like society. So part of the issue. Pop quiz, hot shot. What's Metcalfe's law? It's obvious. I'll leave that for our chat. What is that? 90% of everything sucks? Or everything goes to fucking shit? I forget. This is the first thing that goes on me, is my recollection. Word recollection, name recollection. Sturgeon's law. Yeah, so like this is the first thing that goes on me. If I have a beer and now I'm almost 2 hours into a stream, it's just gone. Cass says Airbnb kind of sucks and it's hard to find somewhere not terrible and more expensive to stay much of the time even when I don't want to use it. Most hotels are awful. Yeah, I'm planning to go to Europe at the end of September and early October, and I have to get a place. The World Minesweeper tournament is in the last weekend in Madrid, and I have to find a place in Madrid. So I'm looking on Airbnb. Looks very reasonable, but I have to look at hotels too. So we'll see. Viper says the network's value is proportional to the square of the nodes connected to the network. Thank you, Vipers. Had to look up Metcalf. Well, Vipers has brought it up before, and it's, it's apropos. It's like it's a good point to make that if you're looking at things in terms of networks, the ones that have the most connections, the most data like involved in moving around them, they are the most entrenched networks. You're not getting rid of those. Yeah, size matters. Yep. So once you're talking about entrenched data networks, and that's why, you can make Blue Sky, but Twitter wasn't going anywhere. Even if you got a mass migration, the way that the networks are formed, say on Twitter, where you've got all the different people following each other and how the information gets distributed, that's gold. That's modern gold. How that information gets distributed among the population. That's the network. It's not the fact that Twitter has a setup. It's that the people have already self-organized themselves into where they want to get data from. And you can't just replicate that quickly. It takes time to build that sort of data structure. So yeah. Yep. Okay, so, but that's, again, that turns the people's interactions into a model that can be then, used for other purposes. Marketing, political, whatever. Okay. The socio-technological study of the mechanisms of control, grasped at their inception, would have to be categorical to describe what is already in the process of substitution for the disciplinary sites of enclosure, whose crisis is everywhere proclaimed. It may be that the older methods borrowed from the former societies of sovereignty will return to the fore, but with the necessary modifications. What counts is that we are at the beginning of something. In the prison system, the attempt to find penalties of substitution, at least for petty crimes, and the use of electronic collars that force the convicted person to stay at home during certain hours. For the school system, continuous forms of control, and the effect on the school of perpetual training, the corresponding abandonment of all university research, the introduction of the corporation at all levels of schooling. I mean, this is the problem. Now that we've got the AI thing, they are trying to get rid of the university research. They don't like the idea that people are thinking outside the system. And that you can see that right now with the AI stuff here in the US, where Kennedy, the person, he got rid of the board that approves approves drugs, and he said, we're going to let the AI do it, which is fucking insane. Because you're saying, he's going to do it we're going to do it fast and well because the AI is going to do it. That is so nuts. But again, that is going to allow them to control whatever they want to have approved. You're not going to have the board, which has to at least try to justify their opinions according to science. Because they don't like that, because the science is not something they control. Okay. For the hospital system, the new medicine, without doctor or patient, that singles out potential sick people and subjects at risk, which in no way attests to the individuation, as they say, but substitutes for the individual or numerical body the code of a individual material to be controlled. Again, yeah. So they're going to plug you into your data model into the computer and tell you what they think you need to do. In the corporate system, new ways of handling money, profits, and humans that no longer pass through the old factory form. Revan says, the hospital part reminds me of how much they single out fat people, especially fat women. You can never have a real disease until you lose weight. Yeah, it's that's the old thing in the U.S. Don't be a black woman here in the U.S. if you want your outcomes are just terrible compared to everyone else. And so it's they don't take the maladies of black women or the problems, the health issues seriously here. And it's and so that's part of the issue. And so they're just treating you like whatever data model they want. You're fat and you're a woman. Fuck you. It's bad. Unreal says, when I ask ChatGPT about stuff I know about, sometimes it is very, very wrong. Well, when I was reading my... yes. That's the issue, is that it speaks very authoritatively without actually being very good at what it says sometimes. Sometimes it's excellent, sometimes it's not. And that's why when I was reading my paper a week ago, I went and asked ChatGPT to explain one of the critical examples, and it got it completely wrong. Now, what it said was smart in general, but for that example, it doesn't work. And that was the reason why that example was brought up where it does, because it was a counterexample, because it was showing that something was different here. But ChatGPT couldn't recognize that. It doesn't understand what was going on more generally. So, that's part of the issue, is that it's always backwards facing. It can look forward a little bit, but it's not always got everything right. And so it's based on what it was fed into it. It's not, trying to create something new all the time. Doja says, Metcalfe's law was modified by Metcalfe himself. The assumption that each node is of equal value is rarely true. Interesting. Okay. Luminance, what's up? It says, I asked it a bunch of stuff about Heidegger. It was interesting because it was wrong, but close enough to seem like I could fall for it if I knew less about his work. Yeah, and that's what it is. It's like, it's very close sometimes, but still wrong. And if you're learning it, you're like, oh, this is great. But then if you get into it, you're like, oh, this isn't like, it's misleading quite often. Reverend says that's why it's a good rule of thumb to always ask it about things you know at least a little about. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not how people do it. Like, and like more and more people like, oh, did you ask ChatGPT about that question? I'm like, no. They're like, well, you should do that. It knows what it's talking about. I'm like, hell no. Like, I don't ask questions about stuff that like if I'm going to go fucking research it. But then again, like, I'm a weird person. I'm only concerned about like weird philosophy stuff. I'm not asking ChatGPT to explain any weird philosophy stuff because every time I've done it, it's been wrong. But like, yeah, like it's dangerous as fuck. Anyway, let's finish. This is it. Like, let me just finish up this last paragraph. All right, these are very small examples, but ones that will allow for better understanding of what is meant by the crisis of the institutions, which is to say, the progressive and dispersed installation of a new system of domination. One of the most important questions will concern the ineptitude of the unions. Tied to the whole of their history of struggle against the disciplines or within the spaces of enclosure, will they be able to adapt themselves or will they give way to new forms of resistance against the societies of control? Can we already grasp the rough outlines of these coming forms capable of threatening the joys of marketing? Many young people strangely boast of being motivated. They request apprenticeships and permanent training. This is the fucking hustle culture. This is exactly what was taking over back then. You were always on your grind. You're always on your hustle. How many hustles do you got? And this is people taking in like this sort of like everything is like something to be optimized. So like it was even happening back then. Good on Deleuze for picking up on this. This is the beginning of like, are you on your hustle? What has Deleuze been arguing while I was gone? Well, we'll keep talking. We're just about done. It's up to them to discover what they've been made to serve, just as their elders discovered, not without difficulty, the telos of the disciplines. The coils of a serpent are even more complex than the burrows of a molehill. Yeah, so energy, what we were doing, we were talking about basically the modernization of technology, everything has become a data structure, and then everything you do is now subject to sort of like efficiencies in capitalism. And that includes every little aspect of your life. You don't go to the factory to produce some sort of good. You're going to the factory to produce a value for the corporation, which then is interpreted according to how the corporate structure wants to market it. And you too are interpreted according to how the corporate structure wants to market, how they want to understand you, and your life is controlled with how your data is understood by the big corporations like Twitch, like Amazon, like Google, who control the ads on the site. But anyway, what's up, Aris? Bow down before the one you serve. Exactly. So here's what we do. We rate the papers. How you doing, Aris? I hope you're having a good day. There's the emote review. If you thought this was fun and gave your brain dance, made your brain dance, give it a brain dance. If you thought this talked about existential or artistic drama, give it a nog scream. Spelling and capitalization do count here. Nog Ora for deeper ancient ideas, Nog Knife for slicing and dicing arguments, Nog Navel for navel gazing only for academics, Nog Turd, all style no substance, still poop underneath, and Nog Grapes for big claims that shrivel up. You can also use the global vote yay and vote nay of Twitch. Note that all these emotes are Better TTV emotes, so if you have like 7 TV or Better TTV, you should be able to see them. Everyone can do it if you install the plugin. And you can also use my vote meh. Note that I do calculate an overall score. Everything in the green makes it go up. Everything in the red makes it go down. And the meh actually makes it go to mill. So Aris said meh, turd, and a grapes. Aris also gave a what's up, dude. Brian says, I guess I'm going the exact opposite of Aris. Yeah, Reverend Latvian Jesus, brain dance and a yay. Revan says, the way he describes corporate life with salaries and such has also trickled down to the wage labor in your experience. That's exactly his point here, Revan. That's exactly right. Energy Dometer says, poop and a nay. Fine. Revan gave it a yay. Luminance says existential, a Ouroboros, and a yay. K. Party says navel gazing and dance. Laughing gave it a dance. Rockefeller gave it a dance and a yay. Nails give it a meh. O'Neill says maybe I can collect some data on which papers get the most bimodal votes. That is part of what I'm going to do. Like on my website, which I am going to work on this summer and get up, I'm going to do something like that. Which ones are going to, because you can do a, how many people give it a nay and how many people give it yays. Like that's sort of easy things to like calculate. Lumen says probably felt like a brain dance if I read it in 1990. I still enjoyed it. Yeah, that's part of the issue here is that this is a 1990 paper and nothing it's saying should be like for all the people on this website. This shouldn't be that unfamiliar to you. This shouldn't be revolutionary that you know about like Cambridge Analytica and how they were using advertisements on the internet to get people to do vote in certain ways, or that people can be captured by like online media pipelines to then like push them in certain directions. There's nothing that hasn't been in the pop news in the last 15 years that this paper has that this paper talked about. And I thought I was doing work to update the sort of the lingo here, like in this paper. So yeah. Latvian says makes my brain dance because I can see how it makes sense today. Yeah, so this actually for me is more like a historical piece. Like there's nothing, this isn't like and I think I understand why I'm on the kind of the mess side too, because I don't think it did a grapes. I think it argued what it wanted to, which is fine. I don't think it failed to argue like what's point. It's just like, okay, we have to be worried about this new way society is going. That's all I thought it was doing. So I'm not going to give it a grapes, but like, it's just not that interesting now either. It's just kind of like, okay, sure. And as an evolution of social theory, it's all right. Now, I don't think about this normally, so I'm giving it a brain dance because, well, it's like, we'll give it a brain dance. What else should I give it? Revan says at the same time, it seems like it needs to be reiterated because I feel like we haven't acclimated to this in meaningful ways. Well, there's problems now. We haven't acclimated to this, but like what this is has changed. Like this is a 90s version of like the technologicalization of like modern society, where just the information, this is just entering the information age at the beginning. We are now in a post like just information age. We're in some sort of like AI modified information age. And so it's not just what it was here. So more work has to be done. Yeah. So what else needs to be done? So it's like kind of like, this is not a, I'm going to give it a vote meh. So it's like, because I'm going to give it 2 vote mehs, and the brain dance I think is fair, because as a historical piece, it's good. As a piece nowadays, this wouldn't fly in AI and society now. You'd need to say something else. It's like, okay, yeah, this is good, but this isn't like contemporary. And so it's kind of like, I don't know what to say about this really. It's like, I kind of want to give it a little bit more, but like, yeah, like, yep. Latvian says, if it did in fact go that way, like you said, he caught a hustle culture 20 years before you're not making an Etsy out of your hobby, you're looked at funny. I get this all the fucking time because I do a little bit of leather work. Like, so I make leather notebooks, leather covers for my notebook. And people are like, oh, they're nice, you should sell them. I'm like, fuck you, dick. They take too long. If I sell them, I have to sell them for a ton of money, and then I wouldn't want to make them anymore. Iris says, it's a short piece, so these criticisms are too strong, but my thing is, if you're going to describe institutions, do some real history with real examples and analyses. If you're going to say it's bad, then say it with your whole chest and tell me exactly why and how. Okay. Yeah. So you're cutting them off at like, dude, you're just doing this sort of like abstract bullshit thing here. That is fair. Like, I kind of want to nog navel this too. I feel a little bit bad about that. Like, it wasn't really meant only for people. I feel like it's talking about society wider. So it's like, I'll give it a nog scream and a nog navel, but like, I feel that pull. Luhmann says, I don't think it's meant to be normative. It's just meant to describe how these social structures change. And that's why I don't want to give it a grapes, is because I don't think he was overstating his point. I agree it's not meant to be normative. I think that was just his claim, is saying, look, we're beyond the old structures here. Now, Aris says, well, yeah, well, give me some examples of exactly how this has happened. But, like, yeah, he just declared that we're in this sort of corporate data structure now. He didn't, Deleuze did not actually argue for it. Now, I happen to think he's right, but as far as philosophy goes, that sounds like he may have just been lucky. Yeah. Aris says, as a descriptive project gives zero empirical support. Entirely true. Yep. It is meant to be a postscript. Yeah, it's fair. It's entirely fair. But if any of you guys do not know Armand Aristotle, you should go follow Aristotle. He is an ethicist and Aristotelian and a classicist in some sense. Writes mainly on virtue ethics, Aristotle and the Cynics. So it's like, yeah, if you want some more philosophy content, you go hang out over there. So yeah, I don't feel that bad about my vote Mez. I feel like these are all fair things. I'd feel bad because it's not like, it doesn't feel like it easily falls under any of the other categories. I didn't say it, I declared it. Thomas Jefferson, July 4th, 1776. So if anyone else wants to get their comments in, their ratings in, now's the time, and then I'll send you off to someplace else on Twitch. And actually, I was gone for a bit because I was having Popeyes. I hope your Popeyes was excellent. Lumen says, yeah, it's a low-key, also low-key an argument with Foucault on somewhat technical point in his philosophy. Fair. Laughing says, that's literally the first sentence is heavily jargonized reference to Foucault. That's also part of the issue. So I do, like, it is a little, like, inside baseball here, like a little navel gazing. Yeah, I feel bad about all the vote mess. So I can, you know what? You guys are convincing me. I'm going to nog navel this, but I'm also going to give it a vote yay to, like, offset all the bad stuff, because it wasn't terrible. Like, I felt this was really okay. You're having some mint chocolate chip ice cream out of the tub? Oh, I'm jealous of you.